Comparison is the thief of joy. Have you heard that before? It's a quote that we attribute to Theodore Roosevelt, and I'm pretty sure that we can all relate, especially in the world that we live in with all the social media and consumer products being pushed into our faces. We are constantly being barraged with an opportunity to compare us to all the things that we don't have and that we think we want to have. Or do we really? I don't know. I think a lot of my perfectionists and anxious achievers out there are probably even a little bit more susceptible to the negative side of this self comparison, always comparing themselves to what they don't have enough of and feeling bad about themselves as a result. I'm Dr. Kit Slies. I'm a psychologist and a life coach here to inspire perfectionists and anxious achievers to feel calm and confident while holding clear boundaries. And today I'm talking about social comparison and how comparing ourselves to others or comparing ourselves to this idea of what we don't have isn't always a healthy thing to do. A lot of times it's not. It is a normal thing to do, though. In fact, in the 1950s, social comparison theory was developed by a psychologist named Leon Festinger. And basically, what he said is that we use social comparison to sort of determine our place in this world, our value, our worth. We might compare ourselves to people who have more than us and say, hmm, what does that mean about me? Or we might compare ourselves to people uh, in a downward perspective who maybe in some trait or in some social way we feel like we've got more than what they have or we're better off in some way. Obviously, you can see how those two things might have different impacts on us. The reality is, though, that with social comparison, there is a potential major upside, and that is that we are motivated to improve. This is a healthy thing when we feel motivated and we're like, oh, how can I do better? I want to do better. Then that's a very healthy thing to do. The downside to social comparison is when we start to feel shame, guilt, regret, just dissatisfied with our life in general. Or sometimes we can even engage in destructive behaviors as a result of those feelings. So, how can we make sure that social comparison is serving us in a healthy way and maybe minimize how an unhealthy social comparison? One thing to keep in mind is that upward versus downward comparison and just being mindful for yourself. Which one do you do more and how does it impact you? Does it make you feel more motivated or does it make you feel guilty and shameful? Can you look at somebody who's doing great in this world and feel inspired and feel, oh, great, I'm going to go out there and get it just like they are? Or do you feel like, oh, I'll never get to where they're at? The other thing to keep in mind, what the research shows us about this is that we can engage in some sort of a bias, some sort of fallacious thinking about this, where we might have a tendency to compare ourselves to people on a particular trait that really embody that trait in an ideal fashion. So, in other words, like, let's just take the trait of being social and sort of a social butterfly and really good at socializing. Well, we might selectively pick people who are just really, really good at that and compare ourselves to them in a way that's not very helpful, making us feel like, oh, I can never be that way. When why aren't we comparing ourselves to all the people that we know in our social circles who maybe aren't quite that social, but who we still love and adore? So, just being mindful of how you're using the social comparison can be helpful. But I want to also just give you three specific tips today of how to stop comparing yourself to others or how to turn that comparison into a more healthy, motivating comparison. So, my first tip for you is to know your values. Know what they are. And what are values, anyways? Values are guiding principles, these overarching ideas that help guide us in life. We know that when people are doing things and living their life in a way that's aligned with their values, they're more satisfied, they're happier. They don't need to compare themselves to other people. So if you know what your values are and you can look at yourself and say, yeah, I'm living my values pretty well, that might help you avoid unhealthy social comparison. And the other way that you can use this is if you find yourself comparing yourself to other people and doing the, oh no, but I don't have that thing, or I don't have what they're having. I don't have that experience, or I'm not as good as they are in some way. Check back in with your values and say, oh, is that thing that they're doing even something that I would say is important because it aligns with certain values or even goals that I have for myself? And if you can say no, that trait or that activity or that thing doesn't actually help me get any closer to my personal goals and it doesn't bring me any closer to my values, then you get to let that comparison go. If, on the other hand, you find that the thing actually does maybe align with some goals or values that you're having, and then you're feeling bad about yourself in some way because you're not at that level that you want to be at, that leads us to step number two, or tip number two for today, which is to feel your achievements and foster gratitude and awareness about your achievements and your progress. It is so common and it is so easy to focus on how far we have to go and how we're maybe not living the life that we want to live, or we haven't achieved the things that we want to achieve. And it's good to have goals and it's good to work towards them, but our brains can get hyper focused on focusing on the negative and the fact that we're maybe not as far as long as we want to be. When in reality, you have hit so many mile markers, so many goalposts in your life. You have so many achievements already behind you. And if you can take the time to really take stock of those and take them in, that will help you feel like, hey, I'm doing pretty great compared to other people. Okay. And maybe you don't do this. So if you don't do this, if you don't sort of stop to smell the roses and take that stock and gratitude and celebrate yourself for the achievements that you've already achieved, then for the first step for you would be to take stock by writing them down. Look at them, see how long, challenge yourself. How many goals, milestones, progress, successes, achievements, accomplishments, I don't, whatever word you want to use, how many of those can you write down and just keep it somewhere where you can see it? Then as you're doing that, I want you to kind of glance back at it every once in a while and pick one or two of those things. And I want you to reflect on a couple of things. One thing is, what was your role specifically in that success? Really be specific. How did you contribute? Was it like um, a thing that you set out very intentionally and worked hard at? Did it come more easily, but something about a trait that you have really helped you achieve that? It doesn't really matter what your role is. Just shine the light on that because it will help you. It will help the achievement sink in. And side note, it will help you acknowledge what your strengths are that you can continue to use and apply in reaching your goals and just living life in general. The other way to really take stock of this and help it sink in and not just be focusing on the next thing is to sit with those achievements and focus on, well, how did that really feel? Go back in time to when you achieved that, when you hit that mile marker. How did it feel emotionally, but also in your body? What kind of physical sensations do you resonate with as you go back and live that? That will help that experience really sink in for you. And it will be one that we're not leaving in the dust and it's way back there. Oh, it doesn't really matter that I accomplished all these things. It will help you feel more present and able to really feel like you are accomplished and successful in this world. Okay, so that's tip number two. The final tip that I'll leave you with today is to just stop spending time in situations that lead you to unhealthy social comparison. So this just begins with you noticing when you're doing that for yourself. I mean, be honest. If you can honestly tell me that after 15, 30 minutes, an hour, I don't know how much time are you wasting on social media, but after whatever amount of time you're spending on whatever your social media platform preference is, if you can honestly tell me that after that time that you feel fulfilled, like your cup is filled, you're satisfied with life after doing that, then please have at it. But if after spending time on social media, you feel drained or feel this unhealthy social comparison where you're feeling that guilt, shame, dissatisfaction with your life, then maybe that's just an indication that you don't need to spend so much time in that space. Set a timer for yourself. There's apps out there that can do that for you. Find ways to make yourself accountable, or just take it off your phone if that's what it is. Find ways to spend less time. If the social comparison that you experience tends to be in relationships that maybe aren't the most healthy for you, maybe that's a cue to set some boundaries and just back off on those relationships a little bit if you can. And the other thing to help you with this is I want you to ask yourself, rather than spending time in these places that are draining you and leaving you feel dissatisfied and empty, how can you find some ways to fill your cup? The way that we spend time in this world, we are feeding our brains with information. How can you feed yourself some healthy things? That might go back to tip number 2 of looking at your accomplishments, but what are some other things that you just enjoy doing generally? And can you do that instead? If you're still having a hard time getting yourself off of social media or online shopping, or like whatever the thing is that you're finding yourself where you're comparing yourself in an unhealthy way, go back to number 1, which is your values, right? And if you're noticing yourself spending a lot of time doing any of these activities in the moment, just ask yourself, hey, does this activity bring me closer to a value or to a goal that I've set for myself? Or does it bring me away? Don't judge yourself if you find that it takes yourself away from a goal or a value. Just notice it and notice any feelings that you have around that. Over time, this awareness and observation can just help you naturally make the decision of like, you know what, I don't really want to be spending my time doing this. It doesn't fill me up and it's not getting me any closer to my values and goals. So those are my tips for managing unhealthy social comparison. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, please like my video or leave me a comment below. It helps me to know what you're finding helpful and what you're not. I want to make these videos useful for you and a good use of your time. So please apply these tips as they seem pertinent and relevant to you. And maybe you can find some ways to also motivate yourself when you're comparing yourself to other people. So I hope that you found that helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye.